What's going on, everybody? My name is Jordan Thompson, and this year I'm a spring intern for Made to Save. And for those who don't know, Made to Save is a public health initiative housed out of Civic Nation, which is a nonprofit organization based in DC. And essentially what we are is we're a public health campaign, and we're focusing on COVID-19, the vaccine, and providing information and equity in the healthcare related to the pandemic, especially for communities hit hardest by the pandemic. So every semester, whenever there's a new intern, we have to do an internship project. So for my project, I decided to create this show, and this show is called Misinformation. The reason that I entitled this show Misinformation is because it's a play on words for misinformation, and there's a lot of misinformation going on right now about COVID-19 and the vaccine. So to combat that, I decided to create this show in which I'm going to go out into the community. I'm going to interview people about their relationship with COVID-19, how it's affected them, how the vaccine has affected them, and we're going to get real life opinions on everything related to COVID. Each episode of this show is going to have a different theme, and for this theme, we're going to be doing the HBCU edition, where we're going to be at Oakwood University, my home institution, interviewing people around campus. So you said that you've been in this role for 13 years, but I guarantee you there was no year like the year 2020 when the pandemic first began, right? So for those who don't know, here at Oakwood University, when the pandemic hit, we were immediately sent home, but the next semester, students had the option of coming back to school on campus. So what was it like that first semester back when we were on campus, some students were virtual, and you had to accommodate both virtual students and in-person students, and what was it like fulfilling your role on the campus, navigating that pandemic situation?
That's a very good question. I want to say that it was a big challenge. No one have experienced a pandemic, yet alone what to do as far as student engagement. So I had to really think outside the box. As far as making sure how I can keep students engaged, not only for the students that were on campus, but also for those students that were off campus.
So for my last question, Ray, I wanted to ask something a little bit more personal, and I think it's something that I can relate to too. I know when I was getting vaccinated, I was a little iffy about it and wasn't really sure. A lot of misinformation was out, and you're somebody who was very pro-vaccine. You're vaccinated and you're boosted, so what was that experience like?
So that summer, there's actually a local company that was doing vaccination trials, and they actually contacted me because of some other participation I participated in, asking me if I would participate in the COVID vaccine trial, and I kind of froze. I got real scared. I never returned their phone call because of all the rumors you heard, and so I was really nervous. But I think what really hit home for me was the following year, that January, I got sick, my parents got sick, and then come to find out, even though I came out negative, my mom was positive, and she has a compromised immune system. So that's when I really started to get worried about, making sure I take more precautions for myself and also for my mom. So I wound up getting vaccinated.
So one thing about Oakwood University, we have a student population, and about 70% of our students on campus are vaccinated, and over 80% of our faculty is. So before the pandemic, we had a lot of students in quarantine, in and out. Our cases were kind of high as we kind of try to navigate the pandemic without the vaccine. And this year, it seems as though we're not really having as many cases, not as many students are in quarantine. Do you think the vaccine had anything to do with that and the protocols?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the positivity rate floated around 3 or 4%. We would just have more cases at any given time pre-vaccine, but since we've had the vaccine and also more frequent testing and random testing, it's been around 1%, if 1%. Yeah. So I definitely say the vaccine has helped with, the control of the COVID-19 pandemic here on campus.
Another cool thing about Oakwood University is we actually provide vaccines to students and community members on campus. And if I'm correct, you got the vaccine too, right?
Yes, I'm vaccinated. I got vaccinated last May, I think. I got the first dose was like in March, and I got the second dose in May.
And what was it like? Were you nervous? 'Cause I know a lot of students were like nervous first getting the vaccine, like, oh, like we didn't really know what it was like, what was gonna happen. So like, how did you feel when you first got it?
Yeah, I mean, I just read as many factual articles as I could. There was a lot of misinformation out there, and there was like a war waged on social media over the vaccine and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you stick to the facts, I don't think there's anything to worry about.
You know, being a professor throughout the pandemic, it kind of rocked the educational system when the pandemic first hit. And now we're in the kind of transition where we're kind of getting back to normal. Things are not completely there yet. You know, we're still in the pandemic. But how has the pandemic affected the classroom from the start of the pandemic to where we are now?
So at the beginning of the pandemic, it was a major difference because everything was online all of a sudden, right? And most of us don't have online instruction training. And the online classroom is very different from the in-person classroom. You have to just do things differently. You have to approach everything differently. So for us, we were online in April or something like, or May or March.
Yeah.
So the semester had started, and all of a sudden we got to be online. So you got to kind of reimagine the last 3 or 4 weeks of your course for an online delivery, which is crazy. For the following semester, we planned ahead, like, okay, we're just going to be online. So that was a little bit easier, but it was still tough because, again, we don't necessarily have training in online. I personally do, but for us, we don't necessarily have training. And then students also aren't signing up for online classes, right? Students are expecting to get that one-on-one interaction with their professor. So it's very, very different. And it made it really tough. It was very difficult to just continue to do a good job and continue to expect high things, like a high level of accomplishment, high level of performance from students under those circumstances. You got to be very forgiving, got to be very gracious. But at the same time, the students got to actually learn the material. So like you got to kind of balance how much do you forgive and how much do you require them to actually do what they need to do to build the skill. So
one thing that we do at my internship is we focus a lot on communication and messaging to people who are affected by the pandemic the most, right? So one question that I have for you is, if you could go back in time, right, what do you think that the U.S. government or governments in general, what would you have done, or what do you think that they did wrong in terms of handling the pandemic?
I think in general, we in this country in particular, we treated the pandemic like it was like optional, like it was kind of happening, but not really.
Yeah.
Like we could avoid it, but or like there's a lot of information out there about it that's not real and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of misinformation. Some of it was disinformation. So there's a lot of reactions to the pandemic that weren't appropriate from the government level based on the severity of the pandemic, right? So there were other countries that treated the pandemic very differently. I have a friend who lives in Australia, and Australia has very, very few cases just because they shut down all the borders. You can't come in, you can't come out. We got a pandemic, right? So they just treated the pandemic like it was a pandemic, right? So they shut everything down for like 6 months, and after that they're fine because it didn't go away, but it's like the danger is kind of, you know, it's kind of over in a way. So if everybody had done something like that, then I think we'd be past it. But everybody, especially us in the United States, where everybody kind of treated it like it wasn't a real thing, or like your personal freedom is more important than the health of the world, which to me is nonsense. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake. So as a government official, I would really encourage and really try to enforce very serious what are they called? Mandates.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're trying to enforce very serious mandates,
Yeah.
and just make them non-optional for a period of time, because it's not forever, right?
Sure.
We got to shut things down. We got to be very serious for a period of time so that we can get past it.
One thing that you hinted towards in your response was the health of the world, and like the priority of the world versus like your personal health.
Yeah.
As somebody who's vaccinated and boosted, I think a lot of that decision is not just about you. Like, was that something that kind of influenced your decision to get boosted?
Absolutely. So I work in the service industry, right? I'm an educator. So my job, my career is not me. My career is you, right? My whole focus is trying to make other people better. So for me, in order to be the best I can be, I have to be safe myself, so that people can be near me. Like, you wouldn't be able to sit this close to me if I wasn't vaccinated and boosted. You wouldn't be able to do your project. So it's like, this is important to me. So like, for me, it's enough. Like, even if I wasn't sure about how I would respond to the vaccine, which I am, but even if I wasn't sure, I would at least risk it, because the ultimate goal is not myself. The ultimate goal is the community. So I think that's an important thing to consider. You got to be compassionate in general, right?
Yeah.
Just to the world, you got to be compassionate. So that's my take on it.